a kind of massive divide between a core that's doing fine and a mass of people that have a harder and harder time. Enter this situation with a deepening bitterness in the population. Because remember, if there's a recovery that affects only 10%, therefore not you, but you keep reading in the newspaper and hearing on television and watching someone tell you there's a recovery going on, then in our bizarre culture here in the United States, most people seem to conclude that either one of two things is available to explain this. A, something's wrong with me. I'm not participating in this recovery. I didn't go to the right school. I didn't take the right courses. I didn't choose the right job. It's my fault. I screwed up. Otherwise, the recovery that so many others are enjoying would be here for me too. And this can lead you into all kinds of upset, self-doubt, self-esteem, losses, self-blame, with all of the pathology that goes with that. The other option is to begin that age-old, and here in America, well-rooted program of finding the appropriate scapegoat. Why isn't recovery happening to me? Why is my job more insecure than secure? Why are my wages being cut, my benefits being cut, my situation being cut? And even if mine isn't, my mother's is, and now I'm going to have to help her, or my spouse's is, or. And where are the scapegoats? Well, you already know. Depending on what part of the country you're in, you may, for example, be really excited about scapegoating immigrants. Always a popular target. But in the Southwest, for example, it can reach white heat of intensity. It's those Hispanics coming across the border from an economic disaster even worse than here. Otherwise, why would they come? But the one that's most favored, because it gets the most support, is the following scapegoat. It is the government. The government is doing it to us. The government is why we, I, you, me, my neighbor, my country, everybody around me isn't doing better, isn't participating in the recovery. It's those horrible politicians. Now, in part, this is an old American tradition. I've tried to deal with it with humor here with you in the past. Since you often laughed, I'm going to briefly repeat it, just to inject some levity. Some of your faces are getting long. I don't want that. I want to remind you, Americans have a very special ideology, much more developed than in most other parts of the world. If something goes wrong in the economy, Americans blame politicians. Let me do that again. If you lose your job in a certain state, you are furious about the senator. What does the senator have to do with your losing your job? Probably nothing. The overwhelming number of people who lost their jobs in this great recession since 2007 were fired by private employers. Overwhelming majority, 85, 90%. An unemployed person would logically be expected to be angry at the person who booted him or her, who told him not to come back on Monday morning. You're unemployed. You've worked here 8 or 9 years. We've really enjoyed having you. Don't show your face again. But they don't. They get angry at politicians. And we know why. We have a long history of allowing everyone to think of a politician as a crook. The employer, less so. So partly, it's not surprising that we scapegoat the government. The government is screwing us. The government is the problem. And we have a political party that builds its entire existence around this. They're called Republicans. So if we have a bad recovery that doesn't help the vast majority of people, in come the Republicans, the party in power when the crisis hit. And we vote them back in because they sing the song of the government is the problem better than anybody else does. And the American people, looking for a scapegoat, will get very angry at the politicians. Join a Tea Party or whatever the latest form of this lunacy is, and express what? Their enjoyment of the Republican Party? Hardly. But their fury at something. And government is an allowable object of rage in our society. As in certain parts of the country, immigrants are, or Arabs could be, or Muslims are, or whatever else a particular community can come to fasten on as a substitute for dealing with what the real problems in its environment are. And if we have only one other party, which seeing the success of the Republicans playing this game follows suit by trying to do the same, well, then we have what we have. You get to choose between somebody who's a plausible champion of beating up the government, the Republicans, versus a Me Too version, the Democrats, and that never works out real well for the Me Tooers. They will have to come up with some other thing. And so we did see several signs over the last month and a half since we met of the American people going more in the direction of a scapegoating mentality, and in particular, a rage against the government. I don't want to overdo it, but when a disturbed young man then has to go put a bullet in the head of a congresswoman whose influence on the government policy is like that, you can see how this plays itself out, and how no doubt it will continue to play itself out in the months and years ahead. This is part of a process that this society goes through. So we're going to have attack on the government. And you can already see where it's going at the federal level. I'm going to conclude the update with that. The plan of the federal government, which is astonishing, but the plan of the federal government is to do a version of what I've already shown to you about the cities and the states. That is to cut services. One of the first targets, and this should be coming any day now, is an assault on the Social Security system. Coming from that commission that is led by two people, one Republican, one Democrat. The Bowles, the Democrat, is a Republican. The other one is a Republican. You have a Democratic Republican and a Republican Republican. They are going to propose postponing the age of eligibility for your Social Security benefits from 65 to 67 in all likelihood, and various kinds of cutbacks and co-pays that are going to reduce the flow of benefits. Again, please notice, if you make people wait more until they're older to retire, it means you are sending a message to millions of Americans at that age, 65, don't retire, because we're not going to support you until you're 67. So millions of Americans are going to stay in their jobs at a time when we need what?
Jobs.
Jobs for the unemployed. We're not going to get them because those jobs are going to be held on to, for a perfectly understandable reason, by the older folks whose retirement programs are being cut back. There are already plenty of studies showing that older people are postponing leaving the labor force. It's already clear, it's already been going on for some time, it's accelerating now, and we're going to see that play itself out. That undermines any program to reduce unemployment. You're basically keeping people who might have opened jobs for younger people coming into the labor force and for unemployed, not doing it anymore, and now the government's going to give them a push. You're also going to give less money to the retirees, which means they will spend less, and that will have a depressive effect on this economy. You are, in other words, undertaking steps that actually make the economic situation worse. It leads liberals to an absolute apoplexy of upset. And I'm going to pick my favorite liberal, Paul, down in the mouth, Krugman.
Poor Paul.
Poor Paul. Article after article. How can these people be so stupid? How can these people be so irrational? How can these... He cannot get up. Here he is, a smart man. He must be smart. He's at a famous university. He must be smart. He got the Nobel Prize. I mean, a group of people who have money to spend, the Nobel Committee, which they got from the Nobel family, which acquired the money by producing explosives and selling them to both sides in a whole series of wars. The Nobel Prize is only Nobel as in the name, not in the adjective. If the Nobel, he got that too. Must be a very smart man. He cannot understand how and why, if we have unemployment and a depressed economy, the government is going to cut back the money it should be spending when it should be spending more. And the cities shouldn't be cutting, it should be spent. He's puzzled. And in his deep understanding, it's become a matter of intelligence. He and other smart people like him can see what needs to be done. And those who aren't doing it are, consequently, morons. But in the New York Times, you're not allowed to call them morons, and Krugman has a thesaurus and comes up with 24 other words that are real close to moron without having to say morons. But in private conversation, I bet moron slips out. Having traveled much of my life in the same circles that Paul Krugman did, moron is a word you hear a great deal of time about everybody else who isn't having lunch either at the Harvard Club, the Yale Club, or the Princeton Club, or the Stanford Club, here in New York's Midtown, where the lunches occur. I'm going to try to argue as I finish up my part that there's no problem here of intelligence or smarts. There are perfectly other ways of explaining what might appear to be an extraordinary, self-destructive series of policies. So let me turn to that as my conclusion and go back to the condition of the cities and states of the United States as my example. When cities and states across the country are all discussing, as they all are, what taxes to raise and or what cuts in services and employment to undertake. And that's the debate. Between Republicans and Democrats, it's not whether to do these things, but what mixture of them to do. Republicans, they don't want to raise taxes because that's what they're famous for. So they really want to cut the services and the employment. The Democrats, because they have the party of the people, they want less cutting of services and maybe a little more on the taxes, but they're afraid to say that because the voters don't like to hear it, so they say it very quietly. This is the debate. So we're going to have, from the federal level, Obama and the new Republican House cutting a deal, right on down through the 50 states and all the thousands of cities, we're going to have a year or two or three of cuts. And before I go through the economics of it, let me really urge you all to understand you are all going to be affected by this. Whether it's the garbage pickup in your neighborhood, or rather delivery, which might be the better term, for what they'll be doing. You know, that's when they come and you have all those bags concentrated in one part of the sidewalk, and after they pass, it's more neatly distributed, more evenly across, that kind of thing. You'll have a harder time getting the police, although in many neighborhoods that will be a blessing, and so forth. We will all go through coping with the cutback of services that we're going